Engaging the community since 1970. This is WIS Awareness.
Good morning and thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. Right now, for many, tensions are high as much of the nation struggles to bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. For weeks, violence against law enforcement has made headlines. 2 days after 3 Baton Rouge police officers were killed in the line of duty, a police captain in Kansas City was shot and killed while responding to a shots fired call. That makes 69 officers who've been killed nationwide in 2016. 3 officers killed in the calculated ambush in Baton Rouge. That shooting came 2 weeks after the officer-involved shooting of Alton Sterling, also in Baton Rouge. That, of course, followed by the shooting death of Philando Castile during a traffic stop in Minnesota. And then the ambush attack in Dallas, which killed 5 officers. As citizens try to find the balance between mourning the loss of slain officers and condemning violence perpetrated by police, on Awareness this morning, we hear from our law enforcement leaders on how to move forward in unity. We have 5 of our Midland sheriffs joining us: Lexington County Sheriff Jay Kuhn, Newberry County Sheriff Lee Foster, Orangeburg County Sheriff Leroy Ravenel, Sumter County Sheriff Anthony Dennis, and Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
When we look at the recent attacks against law enforcement across the country, what has changed in your departments as far as patrolling goes or the day-to-day job? Anything?
Nothing in Richland County. What we've seen is outpouring of love and support by the community, and that's kind of uplifted the officers and helped the morale. So we're operating as normal. We don't want them to live in fear. You know, when terrorists attack, we tell citizens, you know, we don't want you to live in fear. Every day you live in fear, then the terrorists win, and we want to do the same thing now. We don't want the bad guys to win, so we can't have our officers living in fear when they're out there patrolling and working.
And do you have deputies responding 2 at a time to a call, for example, or are they still going out by themselves? How is that working?
We haven't changed anything. As our procedures is still prioritize your calls, you triage it like you would in an emergency room, and you send the number of officers that you think are needed for the type of call. So we haven't changed anything. Of course, we certainly caution our officers to be aware. You need to be vigilant, but you do not need to be hyper vigilant with all this going on. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I agree. We always try to have backup when it's available, but we do respond as soon as possible to our calls for service.
Yeah, I mean, just being aware of your surroundings and, you know, a little bit more than usual. But like Sheriff said, you know, it's just do your job. And we have 1,100 square miles in Orangeburg County, and we don't have the resources or manpower to always keep 2 or 3 officers together. So we have to rely on our training and our and other agencies and departments.
And Sheriff Kuhn is
doing the same thing, yes. Rely on your training, be vigilant, and just try to remember officer safety. And
part of being vigilant when we see in some of these attacks, some of these 911 calls end up being setups. So you come to a scene and you're not really sure what you're going to be getting yourself into on a regular basis anyway, but now knowing that there's a possibility of a setup, does that make you think any differently when responding to calls, or do you tell your deputies anything differently?
Well, we try to get our communications personnel, when they get these calls, especially in the light of what we've understood has happened, to try to get as much information as they can and verify calls so that you can get that information to the officers in the field. The 911 centers are the lifeline for the officers, and they need to get as much information, and we've encouraged them and are retraining them to get that information out to the officers and to verify the calls.
And before we really can talk about the attacks on officers in Dallas and in Baton Rouge, the conversation really backs up and starts with the officer-involved shootings in Baton Rouge and in Minnesota, and even prior to that in years past. What kind of conversations have you had with your deputies about those instances?
I think we all know when these incidents happen, we only got one chance to get it right. It takes time to do the investigation. So I think so many times the general public sees a short video or a news clip and they determine what happened on their own. And I think through our training and tactics, we know it takes a while to do the investigation. I think everybody has in our communities have asked for patience and support and just let these investigations play out to see what the outcome is. If it's good, it's good, and if it's bad, we'll handle what we need to do to correct it.
Well, I think it's our responsibility as law enforcement leaders to get as much information out as we can as soon as possible. When you say there's no comment or we can't talk about it, and that's when rumors start and people create, reasons for something to happen. So I think it's incumbent on us to get as much information out as soon as possible. The citizens want to know what happened. They want to know why was someone shot, why did someone lose their life, and I think we have to get that information out and explain what happened as fast as we can. When you hold that information 6 months, a year, it just causes problems. And we're seeing that across the nation. When agencies don't have a good relationship with a community and they don't get the right information out as soon as possible, then you have problems.
Right, and citizens really crave that transparency. And a lot of times these marches are happening because they feel like they're not getting that information, but also because they feel like there isn't equality in some cases. They feel like they too are being targets in some of these traffic stops. So do you feel like some of these citizens have valid concerns about being targeted?
Yes, I think there's, in law enforcement, just like any profession, you're going to have some people making bad decisions, and it's our responsibility to identify those bad cops and get rid of them. And the same thing with the citizens. They have to help us. When they see an officer that's not doing the right thing, just don't talk among yourselves. Let us know. We can't fix a problem if we don't know about it. So we're asking help from the citizens. Help us and let us know when somebody's not doing the right thing. But there's been some bad things that cops have done across the United States and here in the Midlands too. We recognize that, but the majority of your cops are out there every day doing the right thing.
And Megan, I think it goes back to recruitment and training. Know who you're bringing on board with your agency, and also make sure that they're being trained to do the job. And also identifying when there is a problem with the officer in the department. We do social media, we have internal affairs, and we have the body cameras as well as the in-car cameras. So if someone has a complaint, we investigate every complaint.
Well, and let's talk about the complaints. How does one go about filing a complaint with your agency? And then how is it investigated? Does your individual department do the investigation, or do you outsource it?
It kind of depends on the
internal affairs. I think most of us probably have our own internal affairs, so when somebody makes a complaint, we investigate that.
It depends on the complaint.
Yeah.
And it depends on the circumstance of the complaint. I mean, if it's a truly serious violation, you may want to call in SLED or another agency to look at that as an independent investigation, but most complaints are handled through an internal affairs. In our agency, we have 2 investigators that look at internal affairs, and then once that investigation is completed, it goes before a review board, and the review board then decides whether it needs to be pushed further or whether it can be resolved in-house. And I think most every agency of any size and of any accredited agency all has some form of internal review and some form of process for further investigation.
Well, let's take the specific example of officer-involved shootings. Who would investigate that?
For our agency,
For each agency.
For our agency, we would ask the SLED to investigate the shooting, but we also would have an internal investigation that would look at the policy and procedure of the incident. SLED would be the agency that would be looking into whether there would be any kind of criminal action or criminal violations, but we would also conduct our own internal investigation. Most of that would be geared toward policy and procedures.
Okay, and is that the case for each agency?
That's the same with us, with Orangeburg.
Okay,
It's the same with Sumter as well.
And Richland County?
No, we do our own.
And do you think that ensures transparency with the public and it creates that trust?
The fact that we have a Citizens Advisory Council that reviews it, we just obtain the facts, and then the Citizens Advisory Council looks at it. That's the citizens' transparency. They're able to see it. And then the solicitor's office is the one who actually makes a determination if it's a good shooting or not. We don't do that. But, that's the same thing that SLED does. They just retain the facts and turn it over to the solicitor's office or a grand jury, and death, and even the coroner's office. So you have these other agencies or individuals who look at it. They're the ones who make the determination, not us. We just gather the facts.
Okay, well, we are just getting started with this conversation. So much more to discuss, so stay with us. We'll pick it up after the break. Welcome back to our Sit Down with the Sheriffs. I want to continue our conversation and talk about deadly force. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but deadly force seems to be something that is discretionary or subjective, meaning if an officer, if he or she feels like his life is being threatened, then he or she has can make the appropriate decision to use force. Whether that may be a car coming at the officer or whether shots are fired, then deadly force may be reasonable. I want to ask you how deadly force is taught in your department.
It starts at the academy, where all of statewide, every officer goes, but it's also deadly force if a citizen is in danger. An officer is there and in the middle of something, another citizen is in danger. So it's not only the officer, but also a citizen that they can use deadly force if somebody's in danger.
Okay.
And it's got to be more than just threaten them. You know, you can verbally threaten me, but that doesn't give me a right to use deadly force. You know, you have to be think that your deadly force is about to be used against you, or Sheriff Coon said someone else. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing. It's the same standards for a citizen as it is for us. Right. You know, somebody's life has got to be in danger, immediate danger, before you can use deadly force.
Well, I want to show a video of former state trooper Sean Grubert and the traffic stop he conducted at a gas station in Columbia. Let's take a look at that video.
With a felony.
How's your license, please? Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
That happened a couple of years ago in Columbia, and Grouper was fired for that incident. Now, in that case, the Director of Public Safety said that Grubert perceived a threat where there was none. How do you train officers to accurately assess a threat, since a threat could be subjective to everybody?
It has a lot to do with training.
Training, exactly.
Training is what you try to do to mitigate circumstances like that. But of course, you know, no amount of training that you go through can replicate an actual circumstance. But you teach a force continuum. You work with the policy. You restate and state policy. And then as you go into the field, you hope that that is how the officers react.
And all of us sitting here can see something different in this same video, but to actually try and put ourselves in his position is, you know, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. So you have to really understand that we have just split-second decisions to make. Not saying that everything that I saw in this video was accurate or should have been done, but it's a different world when you have yourself out there, and when training and common sense doesn't kick in, then you got a problem.
And I agree with Sheriff Coon as well. It starts at the academy, then the training is internal with your agency as well. And, you know, the discretion of that officer, whether it poses a threat and what type of threat, he certainly doesn't have much time to act. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of burden that's placed on law enforcement.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
You know, we see something negative there, but I think a lot of positive came out of that shooting. You actually saw this young man put his hands up and get shot at. That didn't happen in Ferguson, and you saw Ferguson explode. It actually happened here. And you didn't see Richland County, the city of Columbia, get burned down. And I think that has a lot to do with the relationship that we've built with the community. They understand that we're going to do the right thing and hold those accountable when they do something wrong. So it was a negative situation, but a lot of positive came out of it.
Well, and then we always talk about compliance, that, you know, when you get pulled over, you should comply. And in that case, he was complying. He was getting his ID, getting his wallet, putting his hands up. So if we tell people to comply, but in cases like this and in others, Minnesota, for example, at least we think that's what happened, what do you tell citizens now when compliance can lead to a shooting or can lead to you losing your life?
We reinforce it, compliance. Our officers are trained compliant. The citizen do with compliance, and if a citizen doesn't, then it's a red flag. You may or may not think something is wrong. So we encourage the citizen. We speak to different groups, encourage them to still comply with the officer. One isolated incident doesn't take away what we enforcing our officers out there, what we teaching them.
So what do you tell someone right now? What do you tell a viewer today what they need to do if they get pulled over?
Comply. Comply. The officer's going to look at your hands. The hands are what's going to hurt you. And we tell them, always show your hands. Put your hands on top of the steering wheel. If it's at night, turn the inside light on, put your hands on top of the steering wheel. That officer is going to look for your hands, and if they see your hands, then that kind of de-escalates that stress level in that officer. So that's the main thing we tell them is don't make any quick movements, don't do anything until the officer tells you to do something, then ask them, I'm going to go do this. Let them know what you're going to do. The officers don't want to be surprised. And so the hands, you got to keep those hands very visible.
Okay. Even when you then are asked to get your ID and get your license out, then you go and you move, and then the officer then needs to do what? Well,
you try to say, okay, my license is in the console, my license is in the glove compartment. Do you want me to get them out? And then the officer is going to direct you, yes, go ahead and get them out. At that time, you're both aware of what's going on. Again, it's that unknown. You don't know. That officer doesn't know what's going on. When they see somebody move very quickly, they can misinterpret it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we are still going to continue our conversation, so stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Awareness. I want to jump right back into our conversation. With all the recent violence we've seen over the past couple of weeks and months, how do we end this cycle of violence?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to understand where it's coming from. And I'll be the first to say I don't have all the answers, but I think that some of the responsibility goes to politicians, preachers, lawmakers, because when we're having a conversation like this and you come out and certain things you say when you have a big audience, if you're telling kids from Santee, South Carolina, that never been to New York, and they're watching TV, and the only thing they know is what they see on TV, and they try to portray that. Then they listen to politicians and preachers doing sermons or whatever, and they talking about you have a right to be upset because of an incident that happened in wherever with a police officer. That creates an environment that starts what we're going through right now.
Right. Well, I think listening really is the beginning of the conversation, and talking to people who are upset, people who are frustrated, and also getting your side out there as well. And so have you been talking with the community, especially in recent days, about what's been going on?
Well, I think it's going to be a community and law enforcement together in this. We have to work together. We have been doing it in Sumter, I would say, as a community policing. And we worship together, our officers, we go to school together, we shop together, so we have a rapport with our community that has been established. Mm-hmm. So when we have to work together as a community and law enforcement, working together to resolve this.
Right. Did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think we all got to do it together. Our officers are humans too. They live and work, and they're in the community. Their kids go to school there, wife, spouses work there. I think we just all got to communicate and talk through this thing. Emotions are high on all sides right now, and I think the old saying, emotion trumps reason, and most times we all just got to settle down and come to the table and have some real hard, honest communication.
But I think we're way ahead of a lot of places, though. We just didn't start community policing and building relationships. Every one of us up here has been doing this for years, and I think we're seeing the benefits of that now, because we don't have the problem some other areas have, because we built good relationships with the community. Majority of the community trust us. They may have questions now, and they know if they ask us, we're going to answer them. Mm-hmm. So I think we're in a lot better place than some areas are.
Well, and I want to just end with a viewer question that Christina submitted on Facebook. She asks, how do you get up every day and do your job while dealing with the rampant disrespect and hatred being directed toward law enforcement these days?
It's been a very tough 2 weeks on all of us and all our men and women out there wearing the badge. And I think what you have to remember, what I told my folks, is 99% of the people we serve support us. And we've all seen that in the last couple of weeks, whether that be in bringing food, sending cards, the calls, Facebook, on posts. We just have to get that message out. Most people support us. We just got to keep doing the job we were sworn to do to protect and serve our community.
And we're professionals. That's our job.
Exactly.
We're going to get abused. That's part of what happens sometimes. You have to understand it. Words don't hurt you.
And like Sheriff Lott said, we are blessed here, in South Carolina, especially in Orangeburg County. For example, we just had an incident yesterday. We had to set up our command post at a church. And we had people from different towns bringing us sandwiches. And the people at the church, they had to leave the church, so they left the church open for, different things. So, and, people coming by, putting up signs, it's just been real positive, and you know, in our community, it's been great.
Right.
I agree with the Sheriff. I've been impressed, and certainly with the support that we've received from the community.
And I think the Dallas Police Chief, David Brown, had a pretty interesting quote when he was giving one of his press conferences saying, "We're hiring. So if you want to get off the protest line and come and join us, and we'll put you in your community so you can help make a difference and help us resolve some of these issues." Would you all stand by that?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for taking your time to begin this conversation. I hope we can do it again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing this.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with a final thought. There are injustices in our society, but the burden of action does not fall on one person, one group, one agency, or one community. Problems arise when people feel their voices are not being heard, or when their concerns are ignored or devalued. We all need to be active in the fight for equality while finding ways to exist together peacefully and with respect. We want to hear your thoughts. Visit our Facebook page by searching Awareness 10. That is also where each show is posted. I would like to thank each of the sheriffs for their time this morning. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.